But let's look at this example, and let's take kindergarten as an example. And you can see that in kindergarten, this particular scope and sequence introduces kids to different domains or different topics throughout the year of kindergarten. And you can see that we're going to introduce this idea of plants. And after we do that particular theme or unit or domain, then we're going to introduce the idea of farms. And you can see how between those two units, we're going to start to build their content knowledge and their vocabulary and their interaction with that text. So if I ask you what kind of vocabulary or what kind of ideas might be included in a unit about plants, you would probably say things like, well, we'll probably talk about soil, we'll probably talk about water and air, we'll talk about roots and stems and leaves. And then if I ask you, okay, well, how might that connect then or prepare students to then expand their knowledge to talk about farms? You would probably say, well, farms are places where we grow lots of different kinds of plants, and the weather has an impact on the farm, and the soil has an impact on the farm, and farm grows different kinds of plants. So you can already see with those two examples how we've used two topics to systematically and coherently sequence a student's knowledge to grow from one idea to expand it to another idea, including the expansion of vocabulary. So that's one way that we could see it building within a grade. Well, how might that work then when we talk about this idea of coherent knowledge building across the grades? Well, we could also take the same idea and let's look at kindergarten and grade 1 in this example. So let's say in kindergarten I'm going to do a unit on colonial towns and townspeople. And in kindergarten we're going to talk about who they were and how they lived and maybe some of the things about what they ate and what they wore, how they functioned as a community. And you can see then that that would help students understand in a subsequent grade, grade 1, why this idea of a new nation and American independence, how we're going to talk about and extend that knowledge from colonial America into what happens when we built a new nation. And you might say, wow, this seems like pretty intense topics for kindergarten and first grade students. But I think what we've seen is that because we're squeezing that science and social studies out of our classrooms because we have focused more on ELA and math, that this idea of bringing nonfiction text, which is also important for our early learners, into the classroom, this idea of constructing knowledge coherently and systematically, and this idea of kids really liking to learn stuff, helps us understand that really what we're trying to do here is both critical for students in terms of helping them understand what they need and really effective in terms of educating and motivating them in the early literacy process. And so these two slides, I'll go back one. This really we talked about coherently building knowledge within a grade and then coherently building that knowledge across the grade is an example of what the Common Core is asking for or looking for in terms of Standard 10 and this idea of building systematically.